All right, everyone, welcome back. It is Midnight Magic Musings. It's an anniversary for the Earl and I. It is episode number 15. I am Lord Cephas. I am humbly joining the Earl of Florida. Earl, how are you doing on this very festive recording night?
Well, I have moments of glee with the Mandalorian finally dropping season 3, and worry for Ant-Man 3 in the future of the MCU.
Well, the Earl is ready to get into it, and so are we, but we have a couple of housekeeping matters we do need to address here early. The first one is we will have a Combat One wrestling podcast next Tuesday night following NXT. They have a special on USA Network, and we'll be covering that right after that is over. Now, unlike, let's say, the Royal Rumble, which we covered earlier this year, or the Elimination Chamber that Earl and the Baron helped cover in my absence, we presume that it will stay pretty close to the amount of time they have actually scheduled since it's live and televised on USA. Maybe a couple of minute overrun, but that's probably it. So we feel fairly confident we can actually record a podcast and get it up before, say, Friday night of next week. And so we'll have that coming. That's one of the things we look forward to. Secondarily, we have some additional content coming up on Saturday here on the Midnight Magic Musings channel, and possibly, hopefully, something will be posted on Monday night as well. Again, don't want to give away too much, but we're hopeful if schedules work out, we'll have a special treat for all you listeners and viewers here on the Midnight Magic Music channel. Having said that, the last thing is the Earl and I have been talking back and forth today. It looks like we are going to do our own March Madness brackets. Now, if you're not familiar with March Madness, it's the NCAA basketball tournament where they pull together, well, it used to be 64 teams. Now, technically, it's 68 teams because they have the play-in games and whatnot. But it's still one of the greatest times to be a sports fan. When this happens. So we'll be doing it. We'll see how we stack up against one another. We might even do a little preview of the NCAA tournament, especially if my alma mater wins their conference tournament on Sunday afternoon. We'll definitely have to talk about it here. We'll do a sports show with the Earl. But having said that, Earl, you've already previewed it. We got stuff to talk about. So let's go ahead and jump right into it if we can. And let's start with John Wick 4. Now, a lot of good information came out in a Deadline article this week. First of all, and I'll get this up so we can actually discuss it right now. And again, these are estimates through tracking through early pre-sales of movie tickets. But right now, it's being projected to bring in somewhere between $60 and $70 million in the opening weekend. Now, Earl, if they were to do that and actually hit between 60 and 70 million, that would be the highest domestic opening for this R-rated franchise that Keanu Reeves stars in. It would be a really big get for the movie theaters because they're really struggling still post-pandemic. It would also be the biggest opening for Lionsgate Films, who are actually going to be mentioned 2 different times on tonight's broadcast. But in this case, it would be their biggest opening post-COVID. And so they're really, really, really betting and hoping on a big opening. Now, that's one thing. How do you see John Wick number 4? Do you see any slowdown in the franchise, or do you expect it to take it to the next level?
Well, I have to preface this with I'm a big fan of the John Wick movies. I'm a big fan of Keanu Reeves. I liked him all the way back when he was Bill and Ted, and then I liked him in Speed. And what was it? Walk Through the Clouds was the romantic film he was in, which was different. But I'm like, I enjoyed him all the way through before The Matrix and continuing on. Now, having said that, I before Ant-Man came out, I would have said John Wick's going to clean house. Mm-hmm. But I'm starting to get worried about the box office numbers that we're looking at now. In the second week, we had so many fewer people actually go to the theaters, period. Mm-hmm. And so I'm worried that maybe that stigmata of the COVID era is still here. And if that is, we're going to see the effects of it when John Wick comes out. Now, I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm rooting for Keanu Reeves. I'm rooting for John Wick. I love the first one. It was a very, very easy going premise. The second one just built on it. And then the third one had to change up the storyline a little bit because you can only you know, worry about the dog and the former loved ones for so long. So the fourth one expands it or possibly ends the story.
Right.
But the trailer is full of action, full of promise of what's coming. So I'm worried that it might be a combination of the COVID era still maybe in theaters, still affecting people. And I mean, I'll watch it, but when do we stop caring about John Wick? Hopefully never, but I mean, 3 movies in and it's no sign of slowing down, but
So,
I don't know.
it's interesting because you brought up the theaters, uh,
Yep.
the troubles they're having. They've not recovered post COVID.
No.
But to be fair, even pre COVID, there were some struggle. There were definitely some signs and issues there of attendance
Yeah.
by the public. And then you have COVID coming out of it. There hasn't been this big push necessarily to go back to the movie theaters. I mean, we saw Spider-Man No Way Home absolutely crush it.
Yeah.
What, two Christmas or last Christmas or two Christmases
Oh,
ago.
yeah.
But again, a Sony picture did very, very well, but those have been very few and very far between. Even some of the tentpole franchises like Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, didn't really break any records. I mean, I think it broke a record for the third day in the month that
Yeah.
came out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, every movie gets that's what every movie franchise does. Everyone's got a record that they broke. For example, Ant-Man was the highest grossing movie, I think, in February
the,
outside of
the
Deadpool.
outside of Deadpool and Black Panther. So it's
Lit-
number 3.
yeah, literally, we'll talk here in a few minutes. Didn't matter. That's just something that works to fit the narrative that you want it to fit. But John Wick definitely has some staying power, and Keanu Reeves is having sort of a renaissance
Yes.
as an actor. Remember, he did the he did the Matrix movies, got a lot of pop culture notoriety. Again, you talked about what was it? You mentioned Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. There was
Oh
another
yeah.
movie. There's another movie in there you left out, didn't you? Something at a beach back in the day.
Oh, Patrick Swayze.
L-
Point.
Point Break. Yes, we're old. We remember that particular movie.
What was it? Johnny Montana? Was that his name?
Might have been. It was a good
Johnny
movie though.
Utah.
Johnny
Johnny
Utah.
Utah.
And again, good movie. I liked it, but it's good to see him get a little bit of credit on the back end. What some might consider the back end of a career. He's still just as hot a property now as he
Oh
ever
yeah.
was, and he's been linked to a ton of different things that are possibly coming into production, including a role in a Marvel film. And so my expectation is John Wick will probably meet estimates, might even exceed it. It could go a little bit on either side, but I think this projection is pretty solid. What do you say?
Well, I'd say John Wick, the first one came out in 2014 with a budget of around 30 million. It tripled it. It almost hit 90 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's a win. Second
Yep.
one came out in 2017, $40 million budget, hit $170 million. Or that's a nice increase there. The third one came out in 2019, $75 million budget, but then it banged out 327 million. So it's tripling or quadrupling whatever the budget is, hands down. And so you know what? I hope the best for this movie, and if it keeps going, you know what? I don't want to bet against it, but
You
I
know,
also don't want to lose any more pizzas to the Lord Cephas either.
oh, stay tuned. We're going to cover that. I'm going to take victory laps for several weeks over this because I don't win that many. One of the interesting things to come out of it is there's some additional projects that are tied to the John Wick franchise, if you will. There is a spin-off movie coming. Ballerina with Anna de Armas is going to be in that one. There's also a prequel series that's going to be on Peacock later this year called The Continental. And that's from who is it? Ian McShane's character in the movies. It's going to be based on his character, what they're as the prequel, and I think that's very interesting. It's always interesting to me that for years we had standalone movies, and then if the first one did good, we might have a second one and maybe a third one.
Yeah.
Now, where we're at entertainment wise as a society, especially in North America, is we desperately want franchises. We want to milk as much out of it as we can. I'm not saying that's a negative thing, but but everything that launches, that's barely even a hit. Not that I'm saying John Wick was barely a hit, but they're wringing as much out of it as they can. So
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that you've got a spin-off movie and a prequel. Do you have any concern that it brings diminishing returns if you stretch the franchise too thin, or do you think there's plenty of healthy growth still available?
Well, I think if John Wick 4 is successful, I think there's plenty of growth because people are going to want to know. And, you know, it does introduce an interesting world. The Continental, the whole concept behind it is very interesting.
Mhm.
My only worry about doing the prequel with Ian McShane is the fact that Ian McShane is not a young man anymore. You know, uh, that would be one of my worries is you're making a prequel series from him where, in John Wick, that was 10 years ago. So how much earlier you're going to make it because you're not going to do CGI to de-age him.
Right.
And, that would be one of my concerns is if it's a prequel series, how are we going to handle it? Is he going to be one of the main characters? Is it just going to be him kind of like doing a narration, which I could see that, and him in passing or whatnot? So I think a lot of it depends on how we go with John Wick 4. I expect great numbers, very good numbers first weekend, but that second weekend we've learned in 2023
There,
might
there,
hurt.
there really are no sure things anymore. I don't believe in Hollywood. I think it's a hit when you see the numbers say that
Yep.
it's a hit, when the finances say that's a hit, and that's a really good segue, Earl, because we're going into the next one. Here we go. Uh, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Now, for those who may not remember, it was just a couple of weeks ago that Daryl and I were discussing the possibilities of how Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania might do. And, being family, we have these family wagers that may take place. In this case, we chose not to, uh, you know, put any money on the line because, we're poor. We don't want to do that. But we certainly could put a pizza on the line. And the Earl said, and we have the video, this is like a Dateline episode or To Catch a Predator. We have the transcripts. It's very scary when people use that terminology. But we have the transcripts. And I believe the Earl said, and I quote, it will make a minimum of $750 million. In fact, he was very, very clear and very technical on this. If it made 749, he was not willing to take the loss. No, no. I said, okay, I'll take anything under that. I'll take 725. I'll take anything under that. So I gave him a little bit of leeway because I didn't want to take from him because, the Earl has 5 children and I don't want to take from him. However, there is such a thing in Vegas terminology, what's called a sucker's bet. And I'm pretty sure I took one, but it looks like by sheer happenstance, I'm going to win one. And we will have it forever etched in history because the internet doesn't lie and it never forgets. Earl, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, in spite of your glowing review last week, man, it's really struggled to gain traction. What do you attribute this to? Because this is really shocking for a Marvel film post-COVID. So set aside Black Widow, set aside Shang-Chi, which I happen to really, really enjoy, and the Eternals, which there are not enough drugs in the world I could take to make me enjoy that movie, no matter how hard I tried. But setting those 3 movies aside, this one is looking to be a bomb. They may lose maybe as much as $250 million. And we won't know for still a couple of months how big and how staggering the loss might be. Earl, how do you explain this?
All right. So after this video, there will not be any video proof that bet was made.
I see. You're going to scrub the internet. I see. Okay, yeah, scrub the internet. Take it all away from me. I see how you are.
Okay, and the first weekend it hit $280 million worldwide, and it still raked in 120 million in America, North America.
Right.
They had good numbers. And we went from $280 million in the first week to the numbers around 361, 363, somewhere around that number. So let's just call it 360,
Okay.
and say in the second week they made about $80 million worldwide. That is that's painful. That's I, I'm I'm baffled. But again, I'd like to point out that I really have nothing to say. You're going to get your pizza, okay? But I'm not going to give up yet, because you know what? It's possible it could have legs, because I don't know what happened this past weekend. The first weekend, it was Valentine's Day weekend, I guess. But who's going to take people to see Ant-Man 3 on Valentine's Day? I wouldn't. Well, maybe I would. I don't know. That could be why.
Well,
Either way, moving on. But the point is, last week, the numbers, the ticket sales were almost cut in half.
yeah.
And so I'm not entirely sure what happened there. Maybe it was the end of the month. People were like, we're going to wait, save our paychecks till the first of the month. I don't know. But it's just that's a very odd occurrence. So I'm hoping it would be nice if Ant-Man 3 manages not to drop any further. That 72% drop from first week to second week was really painful. But unfortunately, we do know that there are movies coming out, and going to be challenging it from this point on every single week. And there's no really, when you have a very small budget film take a chunk out of their revenue in theaters, you have to start firing up that pizza oven and getting that cauliflower crust ready for the Lord Cephas. And I'm not entirely sure what happened there. I can't put it all on the reviewers or critics that gave opinions, because word of mouth can get out there. So I literally I don't understand. I don't have an answer for you, Lord Cephas.
So, a couple of thoughts, just random thoughts I have on this. Number one, I've never been one to worry about what the critics said, because the majority of the time I disagree with them, because look, I think for myself. So when Lady Cephas and I go see that this weekend, it's our anniversary weekend, and so we're probably going to see that and probably one other movie, because hey, it's rare to get a date out of the house, without the kids. You take what you can get. But I expect fully to enjoy it until I'm proven otherwise. That's how I go into these things. I don't go in going, God, I can't wait to not like this. Then why am I paying, $50 to go to the movie theater and see something in IMAX if I know I'm going to hate it? That's a complete waste of time and money. I never understood the hate watching. So, but setting that aside.
Well, I have to warn you. There's one thing in the movie that you're gonna be like, hey, and then you're like, I don't care. I love Bill Murray, but I was like, hey, Bill Murray's in it. Then I'm like, why was he in this movie?
Well, I have been told that his scene, he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but in that particular movie by the faithfuls and whatnot. But again, I'll judge it on its own merits. That's one issue that there are some people that hate watch stuff for sure, but
Yeah.
I would never do that. I go in looking to find reasons to enjoy stuff, not to hate it, especially if I spent money on it. Now, Earl, if you were to treat me to it and I didn't like it, I'd feel completely fine because you paid for it. But
I
be
don't
that,
like you.
well, I know you don't, and you're probably not going to like me for a while because I'm never going to let this go. But there's a few issues with this thing. Number one, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Ant-Man is a serious property. I think is a turnoff to some people because Marvel has a flow to all of the franchises, and he has been the lighthearted one. Think about even in Endgame
Yeah.
when they have the van and the ridiculous horn, and it was, what was it, a mouse or a rat running across the thing that
Yeah.
released him from the quantum realm.
Yep.
That's only something that would happen in Ant-Man. That doesn't happen to the Guardians or to Thor or to the event. That's just something that would happen with him and his crew.
You know,
So there's an expectation of a certain lightness of tone. I mean, if you look at Ant-Man 1, it wasn't the most serious tone in the world. Certainly Ant-Man 2 tried to be a little more serious, and I don't necessarily think it hit that tone that they were shooting for. And then you get into this one where, okay, now we're going to kick off Phase 5 and Phase 6 with the big bad, Kang. Oh, he's awful. He's worse than Thanos. You put a lot of stuff on an Ant-Man movie, which historically has not been one of your higher performing movies. maybe that was too much pressure to put on this movie and on this franchise, especially when some of the talk about the Phase 4 movies were they underperformed. They just did.
Yeah.
And so if you just, it's like throwing out Ant-Man saying, well, people love that, they'll come. But like you said a few minutes ago, I don't know that that's true anymore.
Yeah.
Back in the day in the 90s, we grew up living in a college town, and our team would basically just roll their helmet out on the field, and the other team would roll over because they saw that helmet. They knew where they were going to get beat, and guess what? They got beaten badly. But you know what happened after about 5 or 6 years? Teams started going, we know how to defend that now. We get players too that are
Yep.
just as good. And you know what? It's a whole lot harder when the players are just as good as you. And so it's not just throwing Marvel's name on something and they'll come. Not necessarily anymore. We've not seen that success with the Disney Plus series.
Yeah.
And now it's a small sampling. I'm not saying the sky is falling. I'm just saying here's a bit of another small sampling that maybe, just maybe, the luster is not as pronounced on the Marvel franchise post Endgame. And I'll just kind of use that as the demarcation point. I do believe it's going to be difficult to really reignite a Phase 5 and Phase 6
Yeah.
at this point. Guardians will not do it because Guardians really has nothing to do. You could tag in a post credit scene, but I just don't think it matters. I do
Yeah.
think people will come to see that movie because it's the end of the line for the Guardians as we know them, is what James Gunn has said. But I'm also not saying it isn't possible that you see Guardians have a little bit of a slip. And I'm telling you, if that happens and Guardians just hits what they're projected, no more, no less. I'm wondering if maybe people don't start going, now wait a minute. Let's look at the slate going forward. You've got the Marvels pushed back for the 37th time.
To November of this year.
You've got Blade, who only has one fight scene apparently in the entire
And
movie.
next
It's
year.
it's just talky in my best Mr. Wilson's voice there from Loki.
Not.
I'm just saying there could be a lot of pressure be mounted at Kevin Feige's door if things continue to slide a little bit. Again, Guardians may come out and make $1 billion and all is right with the world again. But
Well, I
but
think
but but that's I think we're going to get to the point now, Earl, where we don't just throw the franchise out there and they all do well. I think it may end up becoming more and more selective. Which ones are mega hits? Which ones are just okay? And which are like, why did we do that?
I do believe, like you do, I do believe that Guardians is probably going to hit $1 billion. It's the bookend of the trilogy. But you also look at the actors. You got Chris Pratt, Dave Bautista, Zoe Saldana. Who else? We got Bradley Cooper,
You
Vin
got
Diesel.
Karen Gilliam.
Yeah, and you just got a massive cast, and plus, there are people who are going to watch it because this is James Gunn's final Marvel film,
Right.
and there's just a lot built into it. So for some reason, this movie doesn't. If it's a good movie and it doesn't pull in viewers, then there's something definitely going on that Marvel has to reevaluate the plan. Now, if the movie is subpar or doesn't fire on all cylinders, then that's a different story. But you know what? If it continues to be like the previous two, solid, good installments, and it doesn't hit those numbers, I think at this point, you go to red alert.
Well, I think there's a tendency sometimes by these studios to say, "Oh, and remember this term was coined, the fandom menace, right? Not the Phantom
Yeah,
menace, the fandom menace." And in a lot of ways, that's become everybody's thing. Well, the fan base is just toxic. Sure, there's toxic people in every fan base. That's just reality. But oftentimes, those groups get the blame. Well, they were negative online, so everybody read that and didn't go. I truly don't believe people read
yeah,
Twitter as much as people think they do.
no,
I think most of it stuff happens like you and me talking at midnight, hence Midnight Magic Musings, or we're talking to our friends and they're informing opinions, and that one is tough to overcome, dude. You can put out
yeah,
all the slick marketing you want. I think that's also part of Ant-Man and the Wasp. The issue is 200, what, 200, 250 million to make this movie?
200
No,
million budget, and we're sitting at, let's say, 360 right now. It's like
yeah.
361 or 363, but
And
it,
nowhere in there are we talking about advertising.
yeah. Well, just for reference, not too long ago, just a couple of months ago, there was a movie that came out that was greatly, everybody was waiting for this movie for a decade for it to get made. Black Adam cost 225, $250 million to make, pulled in $393 at the box office. Ant Man is $30 million away from hitting that on a lesser budget, but that's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm like, haha, we didn't know. That's not the point. The point is, this is beginning to become a trend, and that's worrisome.
So the question becomes: have we finally hit the point where society as a whole, I mean, normal folk, not the comic readers, not the fanboys and the fangirls. I don't mean that negatively. I'm just trying to make identification of different groups. Have we hit the point where normal folk have kind of maxed out in their fandom for these type of things?
I would,
Or is it just a mixture of all these things all coming together at the same time?
I think it's a mixture, but me personally, I also believe, and we've had this discussion many times. Look at, not counting Spider-Man: No Way Home. Look at the content that was released the last little bit. Doctor Strange had a lot of issues, and even the director Sam Raimi was like, I didn't have my whole vision I wanted to make.
Right.
Eternals had its own issues. My two younger ones love it for some reason. They've watched it twice on Disney Plus, and I'm like, are you sick? Are you okay? I watched it once, but I mean, it's for them. It's a superhero extravaganza. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to tell them no because go for it. I still
Yeah.
chuckle every time he says, "Hey, you're the guy from TV that flies with the red eyes." I'm like, "Oh, no, that's different." But I mean, you have that, then you have Black Adam, you've got
Right.
the Suicide Squad, and you have a whole bunch of movies that, not counting, some of the big ones like the Batman, that are not going to fail no matter what you do to it, just because it's a tent pole thing. But I mean, what's happened the last several movies, and I think for a lot of it is the content has changed. It went from being story driven, you
Right.
know, to, I mean, look at Thor: Love and Thunder. To me, it was like, if you didn't watch the previous movies, you're like, who's Jane Foster? Nobody cares.
Right.
And do we really care what Thor's went through? I mean, it's become less story driven, character driven, and more special effects driven,
Look,
or forcing a we have to have this many laughs because it's Thor 4 and Thor Ragnarok was so good, it has to be.
well, even Chris Hemsworth said, for him to come back to the franchise, he would want somebody different doing the movie. I mean, that's very telling when the actor's like, I'd still do it.
Yeah.
I just ain't doing what I just had to do anymore. And so a lot of issues there at the Mouse House, things they need to work on. We'll see.
Yeah.
One of the things I will say, we're going to cover this in Triple M in just a little bit, in our overtime session, is not only is John Wick coming out, there's another superhero based movie coming out, and it's a Marvel, all right. It's just the original one, and that is Shazam. We haven't even gotten to that. We'll do that more on that next week. We'll talk a little bit about it in overtime. Trust me, I really do believe all these movies popping week after week after week is going to take more and more and more of a bite out of Ant Man, and it's going to slow its momentum. I think it'll still leg out some, but there's no way it's going to leg out what they really needed it to do. Yeah, what they needed it to do. All right.
What
Well,
I needed to do.
I don't like to make this personal, but since you brought it up, so
It
let's.
feels personal.
Well, it doesn't hurt me because my wallet's not the one that's going to be a little bit lighter. Okay. So speaking of lighter fare, let's go to our next topic here, and that is something we've been waiting on for what, almost 2 years to see, since when last we left, Luke Skywalker took Grogu with him at the end of season 2, the final episode.
Unless you're
Um,
seeing 2.5.
Well, if you did watch the Book of Boba Fett, you realize the story of Grogu and Luke and Ahsoka and the Mandalorian were continued. So if you come into season 3, episode 1, and you're completely lost why Grogu is back, I'm sorry. They did that in another series, and they just expected that you would have watched it, whether you knew to do so or not. And so yesterday, we had season 3, episode 1, The Apostate, aired on Disney Plus. And Earl, you had an opportunity to view that this evening. Do you want to give us some of your thoughts on season 3, episode 1, The Apostate?
All right, so no spoilers. We're trying to stay away from spoilers because
Spoiler free.
um well, we already know that and it's been mentioned before, the runtime was for this was about 9 minutes shorter than most of the other
Mm-hmm.
average runtimes. I think it's what 36, 35 minutes. I think somewhere around there.
If that, yeah, it
That's
was
with the
pretty
credits.
short. Well, yeah, I was going to say you can stretch it out a little bit there.
So I think for me, um, I think this episode hits decently because it hits some of the things we've said previously that it needs to have this, have this, have this, have this, have this. And I think that uh, see the episode 1 managed to hit. You had some familiarity with both locales and faces.
Right.
You had the action that we mentioned that we needed to have.
Mm-hmm.
We needed to have a little bit of a refresher course of what's going on after
Right.
season 1 and 2, and the lengthy pause between them, and we had to have a sense of direction. And so I think I was able to do that without spoiling anything really, but it manages to check a lot of boxes that was necessary to get the show rolling, and they did it in a short amount of time. And I think that was planned. I think they wanted to keep it rolling, didn't want it to lag at all, and go, we did this, we did this, we did this, we did this. Now check us out next week.
Right.
What about you? Was there anything?
So I watched with Lady Cephas tonight. We had the opportunity to share in that. She was quite shocked that the episode was so short.
Yeah.
I had heard it was going to be short, so I knew pretty much. I'm like, okay, this is the end of that episode. When he jumps to basically to hyperspace and then does what he does at the end. We'll leave that for. We're not going to spoil that. We're not going to throw a spoiler alert up on it. We won't touch that. But
Pretty much in some
I
parts.
thought it was okay. It did hit some boxes. It was a little too cute in some parts.
Yeah.
But I mean, you really don't. Without getting into spoiler territory, there are only so many ways you can use Grogu.
Yeah.
There really are. He's the cutie, number 1. He does cute things, number 2, or number 3. He's going to be a Force user, and we may see all 3. Maybe in the same episode as the season progresses. But I thought it was okay. If you ask me to give it a rating, I'll give it. It's
out of 5 stars. What are you going to give it?
Well, we're doing Metachlorians. Is that what we're measuring?
Sure.
Okay. Out of 5 stars, I would give it a 4.
Okay.
I think that's reasonable. The CGI was a little bit, I don't know. To me, it looked like Grogu's body had changed in the way he was CGI. He looked a little smaller.
I think
in the face.
I think we saw a little bit more animatronics than we did CGI.
And I'm actually okay with that because I'm old and I understand.
Mr. Oz.
Well, yeah, that's what we got. I mean,
yeah.
Jabba was not CGI'd. He was
initially.
Well, yeah, he was hand puppeted by a bunch of different. Yoda was hand puppeted as well. I thought it was good. Did it blow me away? No, but I don't think that was the point of that episode to blow me away. I think it was just seriously, let's finally get one back out there.
Yep.
And here's where we're going. Here's what we're doing. Now
we're not going for the home run. We're get on base. That's what we're doing.
I like that. I would say it was at the very least a ground rule double. They at least got to second, and now next week hopefully they can push him over to third or get him home. So that would be my take on it. I thought the story was okay. You got to have a little baseball reference there in spring training. Always love to see Carl Weathers' character. That made me happy. I did appreciate the fact that they referenced the Cara Dune character, Gina Carano. I think it's quite obvious that even though she was fired, there's still, at least amongst the writers and directors of The Mandalorian, there's respect there
Yeah.
towards her as an individual. And I felt like they showed that to her character. Oh, look, they could have used some of those, in the asteroid belt. I was listening very intently for that, and I thought they handled that pretty well. I mean, if you wanted them to do something else, they weren't gonna.
Yeah.
This is as neutral a way of straddling that line. And sometimes, listen, we all work for people, and sometimes their decisions cause us to have straddle lines that we don't really always want to have to do.
Yep.
But it's what comes with it. And so you have next week's episode. We'll see where it goes. I will say this, and Earl and I talked about this earlier this week. We had a Realm of Reality episode / Watcher Files. The Earl gave sort of the background on the Mandalorians, the whys, a little bit. He didn't get in the weeds too much. Maybe we'll get to come back. Yeah, we'll get to come back to that one day. My one complaint, and you know what this is going to be, the helmet removal. Seriously, that does come off cultish.
Yeah.
Like not in a positive way. It comes off like, oh, you don't ever get to take your helmet off. Well, how come your mustache looks so good when you take your helmet if you don't ever take your helmet off? How do you style that thing?
It's Dragnet.
Yeah, it must be. But and also, so that one still bugs me just logically. But and the other thing is, I really dug the Meth Gator. Now, remember this past weekend we had Cocaine Bear. In this episode, we had Meth Gator. That's all I could think when I saw it. I'm like, so someone heard me online and took my advice. And that's the last I'll say with it. Earl, any other thoughts on that?
There's nothing I can add over to Meth Gator. I mean,
you know what? It was classic. I look forward to more of it.
Not Meth Gator.
Well, no. I don't. No,
the episode.
No. Yeah. I don't want any of that. I'm not advocating for the injuring of any animals, wild or domestic. Well, so I get myself out of trouble here. Let's go to our next topic while we still can before we get cut off. We're going to say with the Disney motif one final time, and that is we dropped a trailer this week of the Haunted Mansion, the new Haunted Mansion, probably series that they're hoping to do, and we understand that. Did you have the opportunity to view the Haunted Mansion trailer?
I did, and I thought, I don't know how I feel about Eddie Murphy. Oh, wait. I watched the wrong...
That was the 2003 version. Yeah. Sorry.
I watched the wrong one, and I was like, Eddie Murphy's back? And then I realized, oh, wait, no, this is an old one. So I watched the new one, and I would say they're trying to... I don't know how... The best way to put it is, if you watch the first Haunted Mansion, it was earmarked toward young kids.
Yes.
I would say elementary, even like mid-elementary schoolers.
Yep.
This one is earmarked. It appears to be more middle school, early high school.
Yep.
It has a little bit of more of a mature theme to it, while it still tries to keep the fun and the family friendly aspect. You can definitely tell that the difference between the Haunted Mansion with Eddie Murphy, and the Haunted Mansion with this one, it's night and day. The thematics, it's very the tone is much darker, and I think part of that's because of the day and age and what's expected and what has done well. Horror does well. It has a nice little niche, and I think they're like family friendly or closer to horror that we know has a built-in fan base. So that's what it felt like. I mean, it did have moments of fun in there. I'm not spoiling moments, but I was like, you know what? That made me smile a little bit. I'm not going to lie. So, but it's the first episode. We'll just have to see. That's my opinion. But what about you, Lord Cephas?
Okay, so my thoughts are going to be all over the place because I had so many of them. The Earl knows this. If Lady Cephas were here in the studio audience, she would admit this as well. It is my favorite ride at Disney World. It's the Haunted Mansion. And to articulate why, because it's just so ridiculous and fun.
Yeah.
I got to ride as a kid, and I literally wanted to talk to somebody at the end of the ride. If you ever ridden it, about making final arrangements so I could hang out with the ghost because it is so much fun to do. And by the way, I never found anybody to have that conversation. It still
No.
bugs me to this day. I'm 45 years old and still no one will talk to me about it. And I'm getting closer to that age, so somebody needs to help me out here. So here are my thoughts. Number one, I felt the same way you did about the age that they were looking at. I was saying
Yeah.
tweens and teens. So I'm gonna give you a cultural reference that some of our audience members will get, some won't. Goosebumps.
Okay. I feel that. I can feel it.
I really got that vibe, and it
I would argue that. I would say book wise, we're not talking TV show. I would say not so much book wise. Goosebumps. I would bump it up to Christopher Pike's his series of books. R.L. Stein did Goosebumps.
yeah.
Christopher Pike did kind of like a young adult,
Mhm.
later teen, a series of horror themed
Right.
books. So it's a little bit up from Goosebumps, but I do feel exactly where you're coming from.
And I don't know if it's something that you would take your two littlest ones to go see. Now yours have been exposed to far too many scary things in and of themselves because of who their father is and who their uncle is. But I don't know that for the average 7-year old, 8-year old, maybe even
Yeah,
9-year old, depending on the child, it may not be the best thing. It's very dark,
yeah,
which of course the ride is as well. The the casting was interesting. I get Rosario Dawson because she
yeah,
has a very prominent place right now in
yeah. She's
Disney, being
the Disney
Ahsoka.
family
Yeah, being Ahsoka here at the end of the year, probably,
and
unless
and Night
Uncle.
Nurse.
That's true, unless Uncle Bob pushes it back. That's the plan for right now, but things do change on a whim.
But
There,
she was also Night Nurse.
she was, and that was in the Netflix series. She was helping out Luke Cage and Daredevil,
All of
and
them, pretty much.
yeah, and Iron Fist. Which
Who?
listen, I like the first 16 episodes. Okay, of season one. That's all I'm going to say about that. No,
Okay.
I actually did make it to season two, but it was against my will. So she has a history with
Yeah.
with Disney and with Marvel, and now they're giving her an opportunity outside of Marvel and Star Wars to do something else. And if it's a success, it's the possibility of a tentpole franchise. Now, a couple of things I
Yeah.
wanted to point out to our listeners: if you saw it and thought, well, there's still some pretty stark differences. Well, I want to address a couple of those. Number one, this story is supposed to take place in New Orleans.
Yes.
Now, that might seem weird to you if you've only ridden the ride at Disney World. But if you go to Disneyland, it is in their New Orleans section of Disneyland. So for that, there is continuity there. Just not if you go to Disney World in Orlando. You'd have to go to Anaheim to understand that. Because in Disney, it's not Main Street. Adventureland? No, Frontierland is where it
Yeah.
is.
Yep.
Over on the other side of the Country Bear Jamboree, they have an outside of Hall of Presidents and all. There is well, that's Main Street USA, but that's Frontierland.
Yeah.
And for reasons I can't explain, the guy who talks to me when I used to ride the train never wants to go to the Haunted Mansion or see Captain Jack Sparrow. He just stays on the train all the time. Poor lonely guy. So that made sense. I don't know if you caught it. They had the scene where it looked like the walls were going
Yep.
up, which
Yep.
is what you go into the minute you go into the Haunted Mansion, which I loved that.
Yeah.
They had the widow with the hatchet.
Yep.
Fantastic callback, and I'm sure there's plenty of them more that they're just not going to show. For example, there's 3 hitchhiker ghosts that need to be in that, and they will be. That's
They better be.
well, Disney would not make that mistake. They might make mistakes with the fan base, but that one, even I don't believe that they're capable of that level of a mistake. Danny DeVito in the movie, but I would say Owen Wilson stole the trailer.
Okay. And the portrait. Was that Snoop Dogg?
I don't know because it went 1, 2, and
Yeah.
the third one had the knife. I'm not.
Oh.
I mean, it wouldn't shock me honestly, but I thought the casting is interesting. I thought the pacing was interesting. It's definitely going for more of a suspense vibe, and to be honest, that's not been Disney. Disney
Yeah.
hasn't really done that since, and this is when we were little. They did the Black Cauldron, which was
Oh.
which was a scary movie, or they were Remember, in the 70s, they were doing things a little bit before us, like Escape to Witch Mountain. Not the
Yeah.
one starring Dwayne Johnson. I'm talking about one that was a whole lot more scary back in the day. And so it's not that Disney doesn't have a legacy of doing scary material. It's just for the last 40 years they've not done any
That's
type
not
of
what they're
material.
known for now. Yeah.
They don't get this close. Marvel tinges at it a little bit with Doctor Strange, but that's branded differently.
Yeah.
This is branded specifically under the Disney model. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Oh, and by the way, for Ant-Man and the Wasp, for John Wick and all, here's another movie that's going to be coming out. Oh, and I'm looking at you, Indiana Jones 5. You no, in all seriousness, you got to compete against all these different tentpole franchises.
When does that come out?
Indy,
Yeah.
I believe it comes out in it comes
April.
out right around when Guardians comes out. There's only like a couple of weeks difference.
Okay, because I know Creed 3 comes out
It's
next week,
out.
I think.
No,
It
it's
comes
out
out this
it's
weekend. Yeah,
coming out
that's
this
right.
weekend. Yep.
Oh Lord.
But the ratings, I don't know. I
They
want
have
it to.
less of a fight to hit what they need to than Ant-Man does.
I agree, and we talked about last week whether it needed to have Sylvester Stallone or not. We can argue that back and forth, but he's
Yeah.
not in it, and so we'll see.
We'll
We'll see
see.
what's going to happen. By the way, Indy comes out June 30th,
Okay.
and Guardians comes out in May. So Guardians will be a month before. So we will see how this works. All right, we have one more topic on the agenda tonight, and I'll take this one. And that is, there was a movie that came out this past weekend. It finished third at the box office, and it was titled Jesus Revolution. We wanted to talk about it a little bit tonight because this actually goes back to Lionsgate. Remember, we were talking about that with John Wick earlier.
Yep.
Well, Lionsgate was also the producer on this film, and it is probably the highest scoring financial faith-based film that they've ever had. Lionsgate's one of the few major motion picture houses who will take on faith-based material, and we grew up around faith-based things, and we remember
Yeah.
some of the faith-based movies that have come out, from the Veggie Tales, which no beef with that, or when we were young they had apocalyptic type movies, which were they were shot on a budget,
Yeah.
a shoestring budget, but a small budget.
An apocalyptic budget.
Yeah, she certainly was. And then you hit in the 90s where it was more preachy, I guess, in terms of
Yeah.
the message. Or as we got into the 2000s and the 2010s, we saw more of faith-based films became just Hallmark movies without the Christmas motif. But basically the same thing. So
Starring Kevin Sorbo.
Stop It, or Candace Cameron Bure. Well, that'd be more for the Hallmark. Well,
Yeah.
I guess she's on Great American Country now, but this movie's a little bit different, which Lady Cephas and I will be seeing this weekend as well. We already plan on doing that one along with Ant-Man, so we'll get both of those in. We'll need some redemption probably after seeing the Ant-Man movie, but I digress. But
That hurts.
I'm sorry. No, again, we're hoping that it's really, really good.
It doesn't
But
matter unless you're going to see it 9,452 times.
that's exact, and that's still probably falling short.
Way
But
short.
one of the reasons I want to talk about Jesus Revolution is it pulled in 15 million over the weekend, and just yesterday it passed the $20 million mark, $20,500,000 domestically. There's been no international release. This has all been domestic, and the basis of the story is the early 1970s. It seeks to recap. It's based on a book written by Greg Laurie, who was there at the time. Um, it's basically, you had a bunch of hippies descend on Southern California, and there was an older church that had a lot of older people in it, and they didn't handle well to these kind of people coming to their church. And what they discovered is these were some of the, because of their age, they were charismatic, they were passionate followers, and it changed their church. And what it also did, it launched an entirely new, at least one new denomination as well, the Vineyard churches, which was grown out of that as well. And so the reason we want to talk about is most of the times faith-based films don't do super well. In fact, the last faith-based film that really did well at the box office, can you remember, Earl, what it is? This is a tough one. I believe it was 2018.
They did well.
It tried extremely well.
2018. I should know this.
2018. You should.
That was only 4 years ago.
I'll give you a hint. Dennis Quaid was in the movie.
Oh, okay. I can only imagine. Gotcha.
There you go. Yep. And that was the
Never saw it.
Really?
My kids love it. They've seen it several times, but I've never managed to sit down and watch it.
So that movie was done by the same directors who did this one, the Irwin brothers, okay?
Okay.
So that movie, I can only imagine, was shot on a $7 million budget. Care to take a guess what it hauled in by the end of its run?
I would say at least 70.
You actually undersold it $86 million at the box office.
So they made a little bit of money on that one.
You know what? They had made some money and were able to tithe on it and all that other stuff too. Yeah, they did fine.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this one is going to have the legs for that, but if you are a fan of faith-based films, it's got to give you some hope that, hey, there's still an audience.
Yeah.
There's still a market for some of those type movies. And again, this is a major motion picture. This is not the Earl and the Lord Cephas putting together a movie company and self-funding a movie and putting it out there. This one has major backing behind it, and it's done fairly well. So it was shot on a $15 million budget, and it's already made 20. So basically, make another 10 million, and you've made your money back.
So it basically, in what, one weekend, it is that domestically or worldwide?
All domestic, no worldwide.
Okay, so what you're saying is domestically, it made as much as Ant-Man did in China in 1 week. Actually,
Yes.
it might have made a little bit more because China had only made 19 million in China. So
and remember, in China distribution, you only get 20 to 25% of the total revenue goes back to the studio. So yes, this one by certainly did much better because domestically, I believe it's 53% is what the studio gets.
yes, I'm carrying the L
from the total haul. That's okay. From the total haul. So it looked like a big number. They still need to leg out about another 10 million to actually, if you take 50% as what you make, you basically need to double the 15. So get to 30 and that make sure you cover the production costs.
I mean, it's a perfect time to release it because you know what happens in a month? Easter,
that's right.
And that might get a little boost,
It might.
It might be what pushes them over into profitable to very profitable.
Well, yeah. And one of the interesting things from this movie that I think is there is one of the pastors that's played there. Lonnie Frisbee is the young man who was a hippie and actually ended up starting the Vineyard Churches, for those who care. But it's played by Jonathan Rumi. If you don't know who that is, he plays Jesus in The Chosen. So nice little evangelical Easter egg there for those who follow that kind of stuff. I'm like,
Easter egg.
That you see what? Oh, look at that! I accidented upon that one. I'm on fire tonight. So good on them for making a movie that is worth seeing and apparently seen by a lot of people. So hopefully we'll continue to see some movies that appeal to that genre. We really want all genres to do well. That's when Hollywood is at its healthiest.
Yeah.
Is when it's not just Marvel carrying the load, because Marvel can't carry the load by itself forever.
Not right now either.
No, Marvel needs Sony to make their Spider-Man movies because they don't get to claim the credit for it. They need James Cameron to make more Avatar movies,
which he's already doing.
Which they're funding, by the way.
Yep.
They really need these different genres and tentpole franchises to continue to do well, because if they don't, it's hard to develop any new ones.
They need Indiana Jones to. And we need other.
They need them to not have to crawl into a refrigerator and hope they survive the blast. I think that's what you're trying to say.
You know what? I watched that movie, and you know what? Harrison Ford at 60-something years old, I was like, man, he's still in better shape than I am. I'm jealous. And he's so charismatic still. So I'm like, 1923, saw the first episode. I'm like, man, Harrison Ford's the man.
If you have not watched 1923, by the way, that takes us nicely into our overtime session. Yeah, if you have not been watching the 1923 series, I warn you, it is not kid friendly in any way, shape, or form. Not from
Yeah.
language and certainly not from content, but it is a very gripping series. Taylor Sheridan has done a fantastic job with that mindset in that universe with 1883, 1923, Yellowstone, which, by the way, we've talked about Yellowstone several times on here. We still have no idea what's going on there. They've
They don't know
really
what's going on either.
they don't, because if they pull the plug and put that show out to pasture, no pun intended, or change the entire focus. I know I couldn't help it, or change the entire focus of the show. We'll really see how powerful the Sheridan verse.
Yeah.
Listen, if they have a crossover with Tulsa King coming to Montana, we'll know
Oh.
they're in trouble at that point. All right, Earl, now is the time we get to talk about a few things that weren't really main topics, just some things that are kind of going through my head. And one of them is indeed Shazam 2.
Okay. Fury of the
saw,
Gods.
saw the trailer again this afternoon. It's getting a little bit more play
Yeah.
on terrestrial television, on cable, online. I'm nervous for it, dude. The first one did not set the world on fire. It did okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't 750 million like a Marvel film does. It was far less than that.
Yeah.
This one makes me nervous because it falls on this in the same time frame as John Wick. Plus, you've got Ant-Man out there. Plus, you've got this Jesus Revolution movie doing well. You've still got the Cabin movie with Batista. Knock at the Cabin is still out there.
Yep.
There's a lot of material in the theaters, which we're actually
and Cocaine Bear.
Cocaine Bear absolutely has. Can I say it? Cocaine Bear has devoured the competition. Almost took Ant-Man out. Almost took Ant-Man out for the number one spot, which is just hilarious and sad at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a crowded field for Shazam to come into. I'm very, very interested. We're going to be watching the numbers to talk about that. I don't know. We're going to see.
My thing is I don't think DC is overly concerned if Shazam does well or bombs. I mean, obviously, they want to make money off of it, but moving forward, I don't think Shazam, the IP, falls into their wheelhouse as they're moving forward. So for them, if it succeeds, great. That's extra money coming in. But I don't think we're going to be seeing a Shazam 3, even if it makes $750, $100 million. I don't think Zachary Levi reprises Shazam.
But does he come back in the Flash movie?
I have the Flash movie. I have so many questions. And they're not answered. All I care about is Michael Keaton. I love Michael Keaton to death. I want to see Michael Keaton. But you know what? I am also really upset because the Supergirl in that trailer, or Superwoman, not sure exactly what, there are hints in the trailer of where she came from in that particular line in that universe. But just seeing her in the trailer, I'm like, man, I kind of want to see more of her. But it's not going to happen because we know that they're casting a Supergirl that meets the more traditional view of what Supergirl looks like in the comic books. And so we know she's obviously not going to be that. But, I mean, it almost makes me like, man, this could be a missed opportunity. If Ezra Miller, is obviously the Flash. I'll watch him for that. But for me, I want to see Batman. I also kind of want to see Ben Affleck's final bowing out as Bruce Wayne Batman. And there are rumors that Batman's wearing a blue bra. I don't care.
I think we should care. Actually,
it's supposed to be like an armor piece for the chest plate, and he's twisting, and it looks like a blue brassiere, and or a sports bra, which technically, if it's Michael Keaton, maybe he needs support. I don't care. I'll watch it. I love Michael Keaton. He's hilarious. He's awesome.
I'm not going to judge. Everyone needs a little support every once in a while. So we're going to see. I really popped for for the cape and the wings flapping
Yes.
open like in the original Batman movie. So I did. Believe me, that put a smile on my face for a lot of different reasons. And look, man, there's a lot riding on the Flash, and they're talking about what's it? Gunn said it's the best, most beautiful movie he has ever seen in terms of a suit. Look, James Gunn says some stuff.
Yeah.
This is the kind of stuff where they come and they take you away with a butterfly net if it's not good. So we're gonna see, and it ain't gonna be that. Oh, by the way, add the Flash into the movies that are gonna take up space at the box office. Let's take a little turn here. Just a little bit more news we want to share before we get out of here. Star Trek Discovery. Earl, I know you're a big fan of that series. It was supposed to drop here the end of, November-ish of 2023. It's now been pushed back to 2024. Its fifth season, and it was announced by Paramount Plus today that it will be its final season. Any thoughts on Paramount ending Discovery after season 5?
Since I'm a big fan, apparently.
I know you've seen it, so
I made it through the first couple of seasons. No spoilers, but Ethan Peck shows up as an original character from the original series as Spock, and I loved his portrayal of it. And you get to see Christopher Pike as Captain of the Enterprise, and so it was at the end of that season when there was again, I don't know who's watching it or who hasn't watched it, so I don't want to give much of a spoiler, but they separate from the Enterprise and the crew that you've been introduced to and focuses more specifically on Discovery and her crew
right.
Elsewhere. And it took several episodes of the new season to get to where it was going.
Mm-hmm.
I became lost in that journey. I did not make it to where that happened. I need to stay current. Instead, I switched over to Star Trek. What is it? Strange Worlds, New Worlds,
Strange New Worlds.
Well, I just broke it up. Ant Mount. I enjoy that series quite a bit. So Discovery, from what I've heard and what I've seen from miscellaneous things, I'm like, I'll probably catch up on it because I have an investment from the previous seasons. But after the season with the Enterprise, I was less invested because it took me out of my comfort zone. It wasn't what I was familiar with, and it didn't hook me quick enough to keep me invested to keep watching. Whereas Picard, it took me a year to watch the first season, but I watched it because I was invested from the 90s.
Absolutely.
I had to because when you grow up watching the Next Generation and you see all those movies, you have to watch it because even if it's a very, very slow viewing. But you just recently jumped into what was it, season 3 you started of Picard?
I did. I just Lady
a fan of season 3.
Lady Cephas and I watched the first episode of Picard, and they did what I didn't think was possible, and that was make me like it, and like it a lot, and ready for the next episode. Unfortunately, life gets in the way oftentimes when you don't get to watch the shows when they drop. But yeah, I liked it. I look forward to episode 2, which has already come out. I'm just behind and need to watch.
You're a slacker.
I was lucky to get Mandalorian season 3 episode 1 in this week before we recorded. The way things go, it's
I understand that. I understand that schedule. I squeezed it in just before actually we started filming this. I was like, I'm going to watch it, and it worked because it was also 12 minutes long.
Well, that's pretty much what it is. All right, Earl, is there anything else that you want to cover here tonight?
I just want all of you out there to know, baby Grogu is safe.
Yeah, so. For those of you that are not aware, the Baron of Boomtown.
I think it was Burntown.
Or Bangtown. And
we're not calling him that. No.
Is a part of the Midnight Magic Musings family. He's in the same category as Broken Ansible. Their extended family and friends. We have Kid Duba, who's out doing Kid Duba things, and we have Terrence, who he's in witness protection. We don't know where he is, what's going on, but he's always welcome here. But the Baron has kind of stepped up to help us out on some recordings and things.
Whether we want him to or not.
We've asked him not to, but he continues to come back. He did a short this week, and I recommend if you haven't seen it, go to the Midnight Magic Musings channel, look for shorts, and you will see the Baron of Burntown this week. Who knows what it'll be next week? Where I don't want to give anything away, but there was at least one action figure that was damaged and one that was put in fear of its life, if indeed people do not watch the next episode of Midnight Magic Musings. So I'm going to help you out here, okay? Here's what we're going to do. We're just going to give you a little bit of a reminder here. All right. All we ask that you do is like, subscribe, share this thing out on your social media. Punch that like button before you go. Punch it hard. Let it know who's boss. When you subscribe, it really does help us with the YouTube algorithm, but it does more than that. It helps Earl and I know that there are people listening. There are people watching it from the bottom of our hearts. We are shocked and we are amazed that anybody would want to come along for our weird ride, but we do appreciate each and every one of you. Every comment, the good ones, the bad ones, the thumbs up, the thumbs down. We'll take it all because we appreciate your feedback and the fact that you would want to even interact with us. So, Earl, that's all I have for this week. Anything else before we bring the broadcast to a close?
The only thing I am going to say is we'll have an announcement next week because something's going to be going on in 2 weeks and 2 weekends. We're not going to throw it at you. That's something to look forward to next week, the reveal. But it'll be something that we'll be throwing content out there. We're looking forward to doing it. The first time me and the Lord were able to get together and something like this. So it's something we're both looking forward to. And just follow us and keep up on it because we will show you what it is next week.
Yep. Not only that, but we also will have an announcement for April as well, something we have to do together. We have a lot of stuff coming, and we look forward to sharing it with every one of you. Again, thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for the word of mouth. It really does help a whole lot, and we really, really do appreciate it. So on behalf of the Earl of Florida, I'm your humble host, Lord Cephas. We appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great week. We'll see you next week, everybody. So long.
Peace.